of Howell Zoning Board of Adjustment, Monday, January 13th, 2025. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open, adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 2nd, 2025, a copy of said notice was emailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Star-Ledger. Second, on January 2nd, 2025, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 2nd, 2025, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and for your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Thank you.
So at this point in the meeting, we have, I guess, new members and reappointed members who need to take their oaths. We have Mr. Ryan, Ms. Scottson, Mr. Cantor, and Mr. Kabarakis, if that's correct.
And O'Donnell.
Oh, and Mr. O'Donnell. Do we have one? I'm sorry. Do we have
Oh, yeah.
Good point. If you want to all stand, you could take your oaths collectively, if that's okay. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of the office of Zoning Board member to the best of my ability, and that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. Congratulations. And we'll have for each of you, you can get from Eileen, you have to just, your oath of office, you can sign before the meeting. Congratulations to all. At this point in the meeting, we have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point in the meeting, do we have nominations for chairman of the zoning board?
I'd like to nominate Rich Mertens, please.
Second?
I'll second.
Any others? Seeing none, Eileen, call the roll.
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
Mr. Kabarakis?
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Merton.
Thank you very much.
I am going to happily turn the meeting to the...
I bet you are.
to you, sir.
Anyway, I want to thank everybody, especially my colleagues, for your vote and confidence. I got big shoes to fill, but I'm sure with you guys working and our professionals, Eileen and John, looking forward to it. So thank you. So our next order of business is our vice chairman. Do I have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Matt Hughes as vice chairman.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Roll call.
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kabarakis?
Yes. Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
Next is nomination for secretary.
I'd like to nominate Glenn Cantor for secretary.
Second.
Second by Matt. Do we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kabarakis?
Yes.
Congratulations, Glenn.
Thank you.
Nice to have you on board. Next order of business here is our professionals consulting attorney. Do I have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate the firm of Pashman, Stein, Walder, and Hayden, and Andrew Bayer.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Matt. Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kabarakis?
Yes.
Okay, now the next will be consulting engineer. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we nominate T&M Associates, Charles Cunliffe.
Second.
Is that Mr. Hughes for
Yes.
second?
Yes.
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kabarakis?
Yes.
Congratulations, Charlie. Good to have you back.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you for another year.
Okay, great. Andy, I'm sorry, I meant to congratulate you as well.
Thank you as well, Mr.
There's a little
Chairman.
first mistake, but I want to make sure that you weren't forgotten.
I look forward to working with the board as well. Thank you
Okay.
for everyone's support.
Next is consulting planner. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we nominate Jennifer Beam of Leon S. Avakian Incorporated.
Second.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kabarakis?
Yes.
Congratulations, Jennifer. As always, it's good to have you on board.
Thank you so much.
100%.
Thank you.
Last, we have our certified tree expert. Do I have a nomination?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate the firm of CMA Associates and Shari M. Spiro.
Second.
Second by Matt. Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kabarakis?
Yes.
Congratulations, Sherry. As I said, 9 years ago, you and Jennifer are the only ones that are familiar faces in here, so we come a long way. So anyway, welcome back.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
May I just add that I want to express for the record our appreciation for the service that the professionals provide to us. You make us look good, and we learn so much from you, so thank you very much for doing this for us.
Thank you.
Ditto. Okay, administrative officer. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion for Eileen Kusa.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Anne Marie? Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kabarakis?
Yes.
Congratulations, Eileen. I guess Eileen, too.
Yes.
Anyway, good to have you back, and I
We
mean,
say thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And John, welcome back, even though we don't have to vote for you. It's still good to see you.
You're stuck with me regardless.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
Recording secretary.
Oh, that's right.
Why would you do it twice?
Okay, recording secretary, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for Eileen Kusa.
Mr. Hughes, you're the recording secretary from last year.
No, that's the secretary of the board. Isn't the recording secretary?
Yeah, last year we nominated both Eileens to both of these
Yeah.
positions.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, so you have
Andy,
two.
are we correcting that, or?
You are.
Okay.
Okay, Eileen, so I guess you have double duty then.
Okay,
You act as, you are recording as we speak.
okay.
Okay, roll call on that.
I don't know if we had a second, do we?
Yeah, no,
I'll second it.
okay, Anne Marie, roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Sure.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kavarakis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have the 2025 meeting dates. We have a resolution for that. John, did you see the dates by any chance?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I need a motion for the meeting dates for 2025.
Motion to approve the meeting dates?
A second.
Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kavarakis?
Yes.
Resolution approved.
Okay, Andy, do we have to make a former motion on the newspapers, or is that set by the council?
No, you should do that.
Okay.
Because it's advertisement of this board's meeting. Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion for the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger as the official newspaper of the board. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second by Anne Marie. Motion, roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kavarakis?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure, I guess the township, we'll have to talk to the township. The Star Ledger, I don't think publishes, or they're getting out of the ad business.
Okay.
I read that.
No?
I think the legislature is working on this issue, but we have APP, so we're okay.
Okay.
But, you know, we'll have to, if we have to figure anything else out, I'll report back to the
Okay,
board.
thanks. Appreciate it, Andy.
Yeah.
Okay, the Site Review Committee, we're going to have one change because now that Glenn is our secretary, he moves up to the Rules Committee. And I would like to ask that Tom O'Donnell be our chair on the Site Committee Review. Would you be?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And I'd like to keep Mike and Nick on board for next year. So we don't need a motion on that, right?
You have
No.
historically?
No.
No.
No, I don't believe we have. So the Rules Committee is all dictated too by myself, Matt, and Glenn, so that's all. So we can get to the regular meeting right now. First, are there any minutes to approve?
No minutes to approve tonight.
Correspondence?
No correspondence tonight.
Okay, Andy, could we swear in the professionals?
You swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
do.
Please state your names for the record.
Charles Cunliffe.
Jennifer Beam. Shari Spiro.
Your professionals are sworn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, resolutions, the first one we have is 2024 yearly review, resolution constituting the 2024 yearly review and report. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Second by Nick. Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
And Mr. Kavarakis?
Yes.
Resolution approved.
Okay, and we have one more. This will be Howell Medical Investors LLC, a resolution granting use variance in preliminary and final site plan. Eligible voters would be Barillo, Hughes, Mertens, Ryan, and Scottson. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
by
I'll
Nick.
second that.
Okay, by Mike. Roll call?
Mr. Barillo?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
And Ms. Scottson?
Yes.
Resolution approved.
Okay, we have one application before the board, so I will read it at this time. Case number BA 23-06, Gateway Industrial 175 LLC. Type, it would be a use variance. Application of Gateway Industrial 175 LLC as applicant seeking use variance approval to construct 130,943 square foot warehouse with associate office space on proposed lot 30.02. Associated site improvements include trailer parking, passenger car parking lots, stormwater infrastructure, utility connections, off-site water main extension, lighting and landscaping on the premise known as Block 409, lots 30.01, lots 31.01, and 45.02, and 46.01 Lakewood Farmingdale Road. Expiration is February 28th, 2025.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm sorry, before you start, I noticed that there's a troop of Boy Scouts in here. Are you here as witnesses or just to watch our proceedings?
We're from Troop 515 here in Howell. Scouts are starting doing a bird that's called citizenship in the community. So we're here to see how the zoning board is operating and something like this, and also do some critiquing.
Well, I would invite you to ask any questions. Probably about 50 years ago, I did the same thing. I'm an Eagle Scout, so I know exactly what you're doing, and that's why I recognize you. But please ask questions if you have any.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thanks for coming. So, no, that's fine. I'm glad you... Okay, Mr. Pate,
Yes,
good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you and to the board. Good evening. Kenneth Pape from Highover and Pape on behalf of your applicant. This is, as you've read into the record, a request by the applicant, Gateway 175, for this board to consider. It's a D3 variance as well as preliminary and final site plan. We intend to present the witnesses, Louis Zugner, the professional engineer, Melissa Rubb, the architect, Scott Kennel, the traffic expert, and Allison Coffin, the professional planner. We did not bifurcate the application per se. It's filed as one application, but we will present all of the proofs for the D3 variance relief and the associated variance relief. I think that the complexity of the application is such that if the board moves forward with the D3 relief, we can return and complete the site plan presentation. Just what I set the stage as how we intended to present
Okay.
it to you.
Would you prefer we swear in all the professionals first, and then when they come up individually, we can do their qualifications?
That is a real courtesy, and I think that would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your names for the record.
My name is Louis Zugner, Z-U-E-G-N-E-R.
Allison Coffin, C-O-F-F-I-N. Melissa Rubb, R-U.
Scott Kennel, K-E-N-N-E-L.
Professionals are sworn, Mr. Pape.
Thank you. You can
So, Mr. Zimner, it's going to be our first, so I just need your qualifications, and then we're all set.
Before I qualify,
Right.
Mr. Zugner, if I might, just an opening statement.
Okay.
This, our client's property is 49 plus acres. The use that we're requesting, a warehouse use, is a conditionally permitted use. It is not a use that is forbidden in the zone. It's actually in the zone. It's embodied as a conditionally permitted use. The two conditions that we do not meet are, we are 49 plus acres, and the maximum development is 10 acres. You will hear that the applicant is restricting their development to 10 acres. So all of the controls that are built into the ordinance to make certain that the 30% of 10 acres is the maximum impervious, and there's also a maximum building size, all of those are honored, notwithstanding that our clients have a greater parcel. They're not developing the roughly 39 acres. The second is that the property, the warehouse is to be serviced by sanitary sewer. When the ordinance was passed, it was a condition that development of a warehouse required a sanitary sewer facility. We went to the different sewer purveyors. We went to Mr. Nunziato, who is the sanitary sewer engineer in town. We went to the Massaquan River Regional Sewerage Authority. There was considerable confusion between them that got resolved, but not in a way that was favorable. This property is outside of the 208 area. Although all the other properties around it and the warehouse next door, all the industrial buildings are in the 208 and have sewer, the state of New Jersey did not designate this property as being in the 208. So we're not allowed to have sewer. So we're asking for permission to develop the property with a septic system. Those are the two conditions of the ordinance that the applicant was unable to address, and we're going to provide proofs this evening on both points. We have been working on this project since 2019, and the plans that are before you are not the plans that we started with. The plans have evolved considerably. The building has been reduced considerably, really all towards the goal of making certain that the development that we're asking you to consider favorably is consistent with the restrictions on a 10-acre parcel. Presentation will be initially by Mr. Zugner. Mr. Zugner will introduce the property, take us through the design elements, go through some of the staff reports. Melissa Rubb is the architect who's designed the building. And we'll have Ms. Rubb's testimony presenting the architecture and the interior layout of that building. Scott Kennel is our traffic expert. He provided the report that the applicant relies upon. I'm going to ask that he go through that report with us and point out parking, circulation, emergency vehicle movements, as well as our connections to the adjacent roadway system. And finally, the professional planner, Allison Coffin, has the responsibility of bringing it all together. I'm optimistic that we will be able to move through all four witnesses this evening. I will ask for a break for our court reporter at sometime an hour, hour and a half in, with your permission.
Absolutely, no problem.
Well, thank you, and with that, I'm going to ask if Mr. Zugner has been sworn, if you could begin by sharing his credentials, and then we'll go right into his exhibits and his substantive presentation.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Again, Louis Zugner. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, graduate of Virginia Tech. I've been practicing in this field for over 25 years, testified before numerous planning and zoning boards, including this board in the past, founding principal of the firm Mid-Atlantic Engineering, and hopefully you'll find me acceptable.
Yeah, we accept your credentials. Well, good to see you again.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Zugner, before you begin your substantive presentation, if you could identify the exhibits upon which you rely. We'll identify them by exhibit number. There's the exhibit chart if you need to reference that. But just so that, Mr. Aguiar is able to pull
Sure.
up.
There are 4 different colored exhibits, which I would expect to work with this evening. One is A30, that's a location map. Another is A31, that's a property holdings map. The main one will be A32, and I think you've seen me use before, a colored rendering of the site, which is really an amalgam of all the plan elements and colored for ease of following. And then I also have with me this evening A33, which is the sewer service area, refers to what Mr. Paper discussed earlier about the sewer service area.
Do we need any marked, our secretary?
These are all exhibits that are in your exhibit chart.
Okay. Okay.
If you would, I think it'd be prudent to just begin with an overview, locate the property for the board, talk about existing conditions, and then we'll do an overview of the proposed development plan.
That'd be great, and perhaps we could start with Exhibit A30, the location map. Excellent, thank you. So this exhibit, this is obviously an aerial image of the region and helps us locate where we are. You can see in a purple color, this is the extent of all of the existing properties, which are focus of the application. They will be merged as part of this application into one. This site sits at, we'll call it the southern end of Central Avenue Business Park. You can see numerous larger buildings, industrial buildings just above this property. Running up and down along the right-hand side, this is Lakewood Farmingdale Road. It continues out ultimately to 195 at exit 31. That's about a, oh. Thank you, sir.
Careful.
I know, this is going to be, we'll see how I do, but, so,
Board members, be warned, that's a
Right.
laser.
yeah.
I don't need a haircut.
So up and down the plan, this is what I was talking about. This is Lakewood Farmingdale Road. It's about 1.5 miles out to 195. That entire length, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is mostly commercial or industrial uses, not entirely, but mostly. Across from us, across the street, it's about close to 1,000 feet of property, mostly owned as NJDEP lands before it gets to the golf course. So this is preserved lands at some level. And then you can see there's some extensive woods to the rear of our property. And as we get into it, what we'll start to focus on is our developable area, and the area we're looking at this application is towards the road or towards the front of this site and just south of the other commercial buildings. The entirety of that purple area is just under 50 acres, so as a framework of reference. There are wetlands on the site. We have been to DEP. We do have a letter of interpretation. And the uplands developable portion of this property is approximately 16 acres. And we'll get into how this zone is a 10-acre zone and what our footprint looks like within that. Might be worthwhile if we just wanted to look at, I could show other property holdings.
Just before we do, I wanted to share something. I don't know, this is the third time in the last, I'd say, 10 years that I had the opportunity to present the building in this industrial park to either the planning board or the zoning board. And the very first time, we did an Oprah to see if we could find the original approvals. And we were surprised, there are no original approvals. There were no approvals for these buildings. These buildings appear to have been built by government a very long time ago. And when we did an Oprah looking for the approvals, we came up that there were none. So the buildings that are in this industrial park are there. Two of them we presented to the board and modified the uses so that they do now have a history. But the property that we're presenting to you is part of that original parcel of property that was government-owned that our clients acquired.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If we might just briefly look at Exhibit A31. So again, beginning to bring us into and start to see where on the property in question in purple, where we will be proposing development. And then through notes and other reference, starts to show, it's a lighter blue color, so it's a little hard to follow, but a number of those, most of those surrounding commercial buildings, there is some contiguous continuity between ownership and operation in this area. So it is functioning as a commercial segment with different properties, and we are proposing to be part of that overall commercial development and commercial use. Just thought it was worth briefly seeing that there is some continuation of ownership. It doesn't necessarily affect our parcel or our application in front of you, but just that it's not entirely standalone. And then if we could go to Exhibit A30, I'm sorry, not A30, A32. So now we're down looking in specifically in a portion of what we'd seen as that overall parcel development area right along Lakewood Farmingdale Road, which you can see on the right-hand side. And as sort of an overview to this application, we are in the SED1, Special Economic Development District. Mr. Papin talked to you about how we are a conditional use. That there is not public sewer available because we're not in the sewer service area, not that it's that far away. We are working with New Jersey American to bring water to this site, and I'll go into that a little bit. So we would have water, but we would not have public sewer. We'd be on a septic system. You can see in this, clearly we're a single building. It would be a multi-tenant building, and I can talk about how there'd be 3 offices, or up to 3 offices in that configuration. The single building, and was talked about in the opening, 130,943 square feet. Throughout this process of design, this has been significantly reduced, but that's what's before you now. Office space would be around 7,541 square feet. We'll have an architect who can talk to details of the building itself, but multi-tenant with up to 3 offices. We would have county roadway access, so Lakewood Farmingdale's county road at this point. We have spent a fair amount of time with the county on the access for this, and you can see there's obviously 2 points of access. In this plan, the lower or bottom one is exit only.
Can we stop you for a second?
Yeah, Lou, is that the most current rendering of the building footprint? Because I think what we have is more square in shape. That looks more rectangular.
And can you repeat the square footage again, sir?
The square footage is 130,943, and
Yeah, Ken, do you know when you last revised this? Because this is March of last year.
no, we sent one in November, and I would have it on my,
Do you want to take a second and just go through?
yeah, that's a good,
All changed.
that's it?
What exhibit is it, John?
Bay 32. There's 2 of them in here.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for catching that.
And before we move on from that too, right, so it's kind of not shown on the top of the page here, but there's a parking area to the north of the proposed building, correct? An existing parking area?
Correct.
And does that, is that going to service the proposed warehouse site? Or is that servicing the existing complex that is already there?
It does not service the existing, it does not service the proposed building. It's not in any way related to the proposed building. It is existing, and it is an overflow lot for the building owned by our clients that's above.
So, and the reason why I bring it up, and I'll defer to our planner, is, you know, typically parking is an accessory to a principal use and structure. That's an accessory use that's not servicing the principal use that's being proposed with this application. So I know they're presenting it as just being a D3, but, you know, in my eyes, that would be a separate D1 for that, because it doesn't have it's not serviced by the principal use that's, and structure that's being proposed with this application.
Anything to add, Jennifer, on that?
I agree with Charlie wholeheartedly. I guess we're going to punt it to Andy, but generally, we don't allow multiple principal uses on a single lot, but this is not even a principal use. This is an accessory use that's servicing a principal use on a different lot. So I think you could argue that we don't allow that, but also it's almost introducing that second principal use, which is off-site, onto this property, because if they're using the parking lot
Yeah.
for that. So I would agree, but I mean, I would defer to Andy, really.
Okay,
No, I
Andy?
think you're right. You guys, I agree. Which lot are we speaking of? Can you point to it?
Sure.
I can, and if we went back at display too, we could see more, but this is a portion of that paved parking area, and you can see in the very top right-hand corner, this is actually a building, existing commercial building on another property, and then by pavement, that's connected to this ancillary parking area.
I'm going to bring a location.
If we went back to 830 or 831, we'd be able to zoom in and see that. To scroll, there we go. You can see that the existing purple line is here.
There's more than one way that we can address that, and before we conclude the presentation, we'll speak to it.
Is the access to the parking lot through the property you're proposing or through the existing property?
It's not through it's not in any way associated with this project. The property that is behind is owned by our clients, same clients. That's one of their two existing warehouse buildings on this road is that one just behind us. And that parking lot is part of the improvements that have no history of approvals.
Yeah.
Ask for 5 minutes so we can figure this out?
Sure.
I think that's a good idea. Eileen, we'll take a 5-minute break.
The board will now take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 7:43 PM. The meeting will now reconvene.
Mr. Pape, you thrilled the Boy Scouts.
Okay, Mr. Pate, you want to go first, and then I'll give you our...
Sure. If I might, Mr. Chair, speaking with your professionals, and deferring, of course, to you and the board, we are prepared to present the testimony of Mr. Zugner this evening and also the testimony of Melissa Rubb, the architect. And then we would stop. The issue with regard to the use of this parking lot, the intensity of the use and the necessity of it is something that we'd like to further explore with your professionals. And if necessary, when we return with Scott Kennel and Allison's testimony, if it's deemed necessary, we'll modify our notice to include any additional relief that your professionals direct us to include.
Okay, I concur, the members, we all concur on that.
Thank you.
The only thing that I would like to ask at the end of your two witnesses, if anybody on the board has any questions, so that way you can take them home with you and then, let us know at
Mr.
the next
Chair,
meeting.
as you know, it's a process. We appreciate when you provide us with your questions and guidance, and I think that we'll probably have both of these witnesses concluded in less than an hour's time, and that provides adequate opportunity for that examination.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Thank you.
So we'll continue.
So, Mr. Zugner, we're still in the background presentation of the property. Anything further before we start going into details of the proposed development?
Just, sort of finished up my overview, a couple of quick comments about what we're proposing with this particular single building. Again, I think we're back here on 832, the site rendering.
Yep.
I talked about the single building, the 3 offices, 3 potential tenants. We just started it on Lakewood Farmingdale Road. At this point is a county road. We do have 2 points of access to the road proposed and have discussed that with the county. The lower of those 2 would be exit only. This is a good setup for this site. There are trailer bays, you can see in a darker color, access to 3 sides, but not the front of this building. That's important. There's trailer staging spaces, and you can see those at the back, very far left of this site. Those trailer staging spaces, we talk about it at some point a little bit. They function to make the flow of the building work better. So those are part of the process of the building. And then we've created vehicle parking at 3 different locations based on the potential for 3 tenants. And you can see at the front and then below and above, those are separated vehicle parking spaces separate from the truck access areas. There's a total of 128 vehicle parking spaces and all of that. Again, looking at this, and I know we mentioned it sort of in the opening, while we are 49 total acres, the intent was, intensity-wise, to propose a building and parking and coverage that you see here based on what would fit to 10 acres. So 30% building coverage was the target for the building footprint, and then the impervious coverage was targeted based on the 10 acres. There might be some, I know when we go through the review letters, some minor de minimis elements there we need to adjust to make sure we meet those criteria.
Before you go into the substantive presentation, I'd like you to spend just a little bit more time on sewer and water. Ike said we're not in the 208 area. You said we're outside of the service area. If you could explain to the board, just for the record, what a 208 area is, how it comes into existence, and who regulates, what entity actually regulates where sanitary sewer service is permitted?
So the utility authority and the county in Monmouth produce a future sewer service area map, and it identifies those areas where a utility authority is permitted to provide or collect sewer. And how the collection system and some of the collection elements are within your municipal building and your engineering office, they're overseen by township, but it's the sewer authority which collects the sewerage, and it's the county that establishes and submits the sewer service area plan to State of New Jersey NJDEP. There are means and methods for amending this and changing those extents and limits, and this is, now we have up here Exhibit A33. And what that's showing is the areas that are colored, they're all within the mapped sewer service area. And our parcel, which is a little box in it at the bottom center, is almost like a hole in the donut. So our issue or concern here is not the ability to get a sewer line physically to the site. It's that we're not mapped with DEP in the sewer service area. Therefore, the utility authority, the sewer authority, is not permitted to provide sewer service.
So just to clarify that, Lou, so are you saying that none of the site is currently mapped in the sewer service area? There are portions of the site that are mapped in the sewer service area, correct?
That's correct. So actually, if you look at right along Lakewood Farmingdale Road, there's a sort of a regular green shape. That's actually part of this parcel. But the building itself would sit within that white area outside the sewer service area.
Okay, so the part that's subject to the development is not in the mapped sewer service area, right? And you said there is a process where if a property owner desires to become part of the sewer service area, they can seek a site-specific amendment through the water quality management plan or wastewater management plan through the county and DEP to get an amendment to be in the sewer service area, correct?
That's correct. It needs municipal and utility authority and endorsement from others.
Okay, and as part of the process of, your due diligence for this application, did you explore the availability of sanitary sewer infrastructure in the vicinity of this property? Were the property owner to go the route of trying to get a site-specific amendment to get into the sewer service area?
Yes, we spent a significant amount of time investigating both this mapping and the physical infrastructure for this site. And like I said, our impediment is the sewer service area
and that this is not mapped within the sewer service
So
area.
I would just submit to the board, right? So one of the conditional use requirements for this use in the zone is that they be serviced by public sewer. I get that they're not in the sewer service area right now, but if the board were inclined to act favorably on this application, it's certainly within your ability to request a condition that the applicant seek a site-specific amendment to the sewer service area to hook up to public sewer. I have spoke with the engineering department, and there is, to my understanding, there's some private sanitary sewer infrastructure in the existing business park to the north of this property. And there is sanitary sewer infrastructure to the south of this property on 524 in the vicinity of Mulligan's. There is a MRSA trunk line that runs along the rear of the property. I think it is in a heavily regulated area, C1 buffers and things like that, but there are other means to connect into sewer systems. So I don't want it to come across as, oh, we have no ability to hook up to sewer because we're not in the sewer service area. There is a means for property owners to seek amendment to get into the sewer service area to hook up to public sewer. So that's perfectly within your ability as a board to request that of an applicant, should you deem it appropriate.
I also want to just piggyback on that. This was a condition that was recently added to specifically this land use type to target the location of these land use types at specific areas of the town. The fact that this site is not within the sewer service area, I mean, it wasn't gone, and that condition was not added to this lightly. It was done intentionally to make sure that these types of uses are in areas of the town that they felt were most appropriate. So I don't disagree that there are methodologies available to amend the 208 plan and add properties, but I just want to be very clear that this was not an oversight. Like, this was an intentional condition that was put in there to regulate the location of these types of uses.
If I might, the ordinance, I am certain that the requirement was not an oversight. But when we started working with the various sewage agencies at Manasquan River Regional Sewage Authority, everybody initially opined that we were in the 208 area. And it was only after drilling down that they realized, oh, no, you're not. There's a hole there, and you're not. So exploring whether we can get sewer, we'd love to have sewer. The steps typically are that the governing body has to acknowledge that sewer is being sought and to endorse that application. And then you go to the solid waste management at the county, then you go to not the freeholders, the commissioners, and then you go to the DEP. Those are the steps for bringing sewer. So we acknowledge that that procedure is there. We acknowledge that the ordinance was specific, that they wanted sewer. The mistake, and it seemed very clear as we were working on this, is that it was thought that this property was in the 208 area, just like everything else was, but it was not.
Mr. Pate, my feeling, and I'm sure that my fellow board members agree, I think we really would like to explore doing the public. We can debate how the 2.8 for this site came about, whether it was intentional, it doesn't matter at this point. I think as long as we have the ability to have that part of the conditional use for this property, I think that's where we all want to go.
Definitely. Carrying that to the governing body, that might be helpful. Thank you for the comment, Mr. Chair, duly noted, duly noted. Would you also speak to the water supply and what commitment that our client is making with regard to the water supply and why that commitment is necessary?
So there is New Jersey American Water, although not all that close to the site. And we've spent quite a bit of time with New Jersey American on how we would get public water to the property. There are a couple of different potential routes and means, and it would be a fairly long extension, but it would bring public water potentially not just to this building, but to the other surrounding buildings. It's key to this building, in my mind, because this needs to be a suppressed building. And so the public water line that would be brought in would have the flow and pressure to provide for the fire protection in the proposed building. And that is part of this application to bring that public water to this site.
Could you share with the board the estimated linear distance of the water line?
There are a couple of different potential routes depending on line from New Jersey American, but the closest is about 2,500 feet away, and there's another larger, more powerful line that's about 6,000 feet away.
We're talking about bringing what type of a water line?
This would be a potentially 12-inch water line to the site.
Our client has a commitment to extend water approximately a half a mile with a major trunk line to service this area, out of necessity because we need to have a building that's fire suppressed. If you would begin taking us through the details of the design.
Sure. Maybe we could go back to A32. And again, I'll work through this a little bit more in the design element of how the site would work. From a grading perspective, the existing site generally slopes west away from the county road. That direction of flow is generally maintained in this. You can see a number of stormwater basins to the left or the back of the site. The site does require fill, so dirt would need to be brought into this site in order to maintain that drainage pattern and to get all of the stormwater components to work properly. So the new building would be slightly raised from existing grade. The drainage for this site would be fully compliant with the newest rules for stormwater. Again, as I'm sure you're beginning to see, most of these sites now, it's in a multitude of basins, not just one big basin, and it's the same here. There are the three surface basins that you can see there, or four, I'm sorry, three at the back, and there's one at the front. These are all what are referred to as small-scale infiltration basins, so they're putting water back into the ground. There are also four, call it sort of the four sides of the building, underground elements that are collecting water from the roof of the building. So there's a total of 8 different elements to the stormwater management system here, all of which would be privately owned, and as you've heard me say in the past, it's a requirement that there's a developed schedule for maintenance and a maintenance manual, and that gets filed with the property deed. There actually already is an approval from the Soil Conservation District based on this design. I'm sure at some point we'll go through the review letter. We have worked with Mr. Cunliffe. I believe there's still work to be done to get to 100% on his approval, but we are confident that we will be able to satisfy that and that we're close. Circulation for this site is very good. I mean, this is a site, and I think you can see from the plan itself, we have full circulation around the building. We have 2 great points of access to the county road. Internally, it's 2-way circulation. The only one-way element is the southern exit out to the county road. The main aisles in this, as you see circulating the building, those are 30-foot main aisles for the truck circulation. The aisles within the vehicle only, those 3 parking spaces, those are 25-foot aisles. Again, as I mentioned in the opening, we separate those parking lots to keep them out of the main flow of truck traffic. All of the sort of turning elements function well for trucks. This site is set up for larger vehicles. That, of course, would also include emergency and fire vehicles. Just as a quick sort of general element on dimensions, the loading bays, those are 60-foot loading bays. And then the maneuvering area outside of those loading bays is 72 feet. These are dimensions we've used numerous similar sites and work well. The trailer staging spaces, those are 55 feet deep. You can see, just as a reference, the darker shaded colors there, that's actual concrete as opposed to black asphalt. That's used in the loading bays themselves for durability, and then in the truck staging spaces, there's a 4-foot strip so that if a trailer sits there, the landing gear sits on concrete as well.
I think that we had met with, on two separate occasions, Fire Chief Prochnow to go through this plan, and in the packet of reports he has no further issues with the design. And that's because we modified dimensions of the driveways to his satisfaction.
I know Mr. Kennel likely won't be speaking tonight, but he'll, I'm sure, talk a bit more about the county road. We are proposing improvements along the frontage in the county road. This would get widening towards our site and create, you can see, striped in on county road, there would be a dedicated turn lane for access into this site. Be part of the improvements we come to agreement with on the county.
Lou, can you give us an update on where you are? So has the applicant filed an application with Monmouth County Planning Board?
We have met and presented plans to them, but there's not an active application with the county.
So they haven't actually seen any of the improvements on 524 that you're proposing in a formal application?
Not in the form, we've presented multiple plans. Scott, who won't testify, can go through that to get their feedback. What we're showing is what they have told us they want to see up there.
Okay, and I would just say for the board, obviously, any potential approval by the board is conditioned on Monmouth County Planning Board, so that's something they would have to get. I just want to backtrack and ask a clarifying question. So you talked about bringing public water to the site. So you said there was two different routes. One was, 2,500 feet. One was over 5,000 feet or something like that.
Right.
So the plan that's currently was last submitted to us, that's showing you going south down to 524 in that intersection with the connection. Which length is that? Is that the 2,500? Is that 5,000?
I would have to pull and get you the specific information we've worked with New Jersey American on. I believe that that's the shorter length down to the intersection.
Okay. Is there any routing, so obviously there's the associate business, the business park, mixing names. There's the business park existing to the north of the site, does that have public water that could be connected to? Or does this applicant have the right to run sewer through there?
Sewer or water?
Water, I apologize.
So, I guess what I would say is part of the exploration we've done with New Jersey American and why I've said there's two possible routes is we're trying to see if there's a way, if we're going to run this water line, to provide water to the other buildings so that they would all have potential for water.
Okay. And the reason that I ask that is a public water main and a public right-of-way has a potential to service other public properties and serve the benefit of other public users.
And private users.
Through a private access easement through a private business park that, only private entities in that business park could potentially benefit from, I think, is a little different context on where the main is routing and who benefits from it. We've had applications where, people have run miles of sewer or a mile of sewer, and it allows the benefit of other property owners along that public right-of-way to connect into it. If it's being run through a private property, through a private access easement that only those private property owners benefit from, and I guess the question is, does this applicant have any common ownership with those? Does this applicant have any common ownership with the business park to the north?
Yes.
Okay, so they own the business park to the north?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
All right. I think we just want to know where the routing is because
Yeah.
it going through a public right-of-way versus it going through a private property and who it services is some context that the board should know definitively.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to have Mr. Zugner point out on the map where the connections are going to run to?
I guess what I might like to say is if I know we're going to come back, if there's something that I could work on and bring back to you what that route would be and how accessible it would be to others and what the potential additional flow would be, I think it would be better to come back with all that information to share with you than what I have at hand.
Yeah,
So
I
there's a
think that.
commitment to do so.
That would make sense.
So the water route and identification of third parties who could benefit.
And you're going to talk about the parking, Ken? I haven't gotten there yet, right?
We're going to do a bit of the discussion on the parking, but the portion that Scott Kennel will do, it will be at the next meeting. So we'll go through.
I'll let
we'll
Lou talk
quantify.
about it, and then I'll ask a question, and
Sure.
then if he can answer it, or
Sure.
if it's more appropriate for Mr. Kennel, he can
Yep. I think we're just about,
Yes. So
we are at parking.
I have essentially for the parking some specific numbers. I'm not sure if this will satisfy your question or not, but the total of the trailer loading bays, which I'd referenced before, is 33. There's 6 additional ones that are at grade. So from the plan, you sort of see them at the end, and this differentiates between a loading bay where you'd be 4 feet lower and a truck would back in versus one that's on a bit of a ramp, comes in at grade. This allows for one of the, in this case, 6 of the loading bays to be usable for, say, a UPS truck or something that would come in and not meet that back-in 4-foot loading bay. The trailer staging spaces at the far left, there are 15 of those. The vehicle parking in the 3 locations, as I mentioned, there's 128 vehicle parking spaces. This exceeds the requirement for this building
By a lot. By a lot.
by a lot.
What's the reason for that? Are we going to get into that?
We can get into it, but I can tell you our client's building is the one next door, and what we did is we monitored the parking that's associated with that building, and then we mirrored the same parking intensity for this building. Because it's a.
So, and that's exactly where my question was going, is because, you know, our ordinance has requirements for office and warehouse space, which is considerably lower than what they're proposing. And the reason we asked that question is, 9 tenant spaces with a lot of passenger vehicle parking spaces. Is this going to be more so like a flex space where there's going to be fleet vehicles? Like what's the need for, I just want to say the right number, 78 spaces more than what's required for warehousing and office space.
The testimony will come from Scott, but what I would invite is, and you don't need my invitation, but if you were to go to the adjacent building that our clients own, and you can see the intensity of its use, the building does not have an intense use, but the parking ratio that is there and the parking ratio that we're asking you for here is the same.
Well, that might be true now, but the tenants that go in here may dictate a change in that. Am I correct?
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially it could, so.
Sure. But our clients asked us to mirror the parking that they have where they successfully have a warehouse building,
So-
and have had for quite
So,
some time.
just to add on to that, right, so, and the reason we're asking the question is, you know, flex space in other municipalities where there is a prescribed standard based off the gross floor area, the parking requirement might be, 1 per 1,000, 1 per 800 square feet, whereas warehouse traditionally is, especially in Howell, is 1 per 5,000 square feet. And the reason we ask that question is because I think the zone does have separate conditional use requirements and standards for flex space, which have different maximum gross floor area requirements, I believe, compared to warehousing in the zone. So is it just a warehouse with office space, or are we going to be getting, people coming in, operating, with fleet vehicles, and it's a flex space, and we're getting a flex space under the guise of it being a warehouse? And I think that's just the skepticism coming from my end. Well, we have a certain requirement, and we're getting, it's not very often that we're seeing people provide so much in excess of what's required. Usually they're right at it, or, they're asking for relief from it or around it. It's just significantly higher than what the requirement is. So that's where our line of questioning is coming from.
And I think part of that too is the size of the building. So one of the conditions for flex is that the building can't be more than 75,000 square feet. So this is like twice that. So there has to be a determination whether or not it's flex or not, just because there's a distinction in the conditions between the two use types.
Also, can we clarify, I know Mr. Pape mentioned 3 tenants, and I see,
Three offices,
and how many tenants?
maximum of 9.
So each tenant won't have their own office space?
That's correct.
Okay. yeah, that would be flex spacing, right? If you have nine tenants,
So I would suggest that we put a pin in this conversation about flex versus warehouse. I know Allison is here, but she's probably not going to testify tonight. And that as part of her testimony when she comes back, you know, to address any of the conditional use standards, plus the multiple principal uses, we can ask for a distinction on how this site's going to operate as a warehouse versus flex space or whatever, and that give them a minute to figure out how to adequately address that concern. It is a concern, Mr. Pape, so I just want to be clear, but I think it's something that we can put a pin in for tonight and then come back and revisit it at the next meeting.
I agree. So let's do that.
and if I could just mention one other thing, the architectural plans do have an office space for each space, each of the 9 tenant spaces. There's an office space for each one on the architect's plans that I can see.
So we probably should just need to reconcile between both plans.
Okay.
Okay, we'll save that for the architect.
So, let's continue.
Got a few more sort of technical items if I can keep going. Lighting for the site. Again, we're starting with a new site, so it's new modern LED lighting. What's proposed is 3,000 Kelvin at the lower end of the temperature scale. Modest intensity. There is a waiver requested on, we meet the minimum, but we miss the overall average. What I found often in the way we've done these warehouses is we tend to miss low, and we miss low intentionally. There's a big traveled operational path for trucks. We try not to overlight that. I mean, one, it's hard to light because it's a big area and you have to have big lights, but it's also not necessarily to light all of that paved area. 20 poles, they're 22 feet high, and they're building mounted lights as well. Landscaping, I know we spent some time with Ms. Spiro before the last hearing in November. She has a number of comments which we agree to meet all of those. I believe there's a little bit of work still to be done on identifying and making sure all of the buffers are planned properly. We have 4 masonry trash enclosures around the building. They're split around different spots around the building. Those are done with split block. We have a reinforced gate on the front. There's one proposed monument sign, one new monument sign. That would be at the northerly entrance. And I believe we've addressed utilities pretty thoroughly.
Just a few, so status of outside agencies. You indicated that the Freehold Soil Conservation District has issued a permit for this plan.
It has been issued for this plan, might obviously need some, reissue or update at some point. We've met with New Jersey American, we've met with the county, but we've not submitted those applications yet. We do have a letter of interpretation on the wetlands from NJDEP. We still need to obtain ultimately general permits and transition area waiver from DEP.
Those applications are filed?
They have been filed.
They're filed. That is the direct presentation that Mr. Zugner was prepared to. We're prepared to address questions from your professionals and from the board at this time or after the architect. I defer to you.
I think we'll do it now. Charlie?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So you said you have your LOI, and then can you just enumerate the various applications you have before the DEP for freshwater wetlands, and is there any flood hazard area verification or application required?
There's no flood hazard application, but there are general permits. There are a couple of general permits, and there's a transition area waiver, buffer averaging.
Okay. So it's for the outfall, the GP 11 or whatever it is for the outfall?
We have an outfall, we have a minor roadway crossing for the one drive aisle.
Okay, that's the southerly site driveway. There's like wetlands in the front of the site there?
Correct.
All right. And it's been in my letter, and I believe it might be in your EIS, but one of the properties in the subject application, and then also on the survey that was submitted with the application, there's a number of monitoring wells on the site, and one of the lots in the subject application is listed as an active site remediation with DEP. Can you provide some information on what the status of that is and whether that's being closed with this application, whether there's been any phase 1s or phase 2s for that? And the reason that I asked the question is obviously I get from the stormwater rules through DEP and through our ordinances, the green infrastructure, which promote infiltration and everything like that. It would be counterintuitive to, on a site with potential site remediation issues, to now introduce all this stormwater management that promotes recharge and, the flow of groundwater and things like that. I would think that the board would want to make sure that site remediation activity is resolved as part of any potential board approval on this type of application for this property.
Charlie, you had some information that those were active?
This is just from NJDEP data miner, and I believe it was for lot 3101, 900 Central Avenue, and I think that's been in my letter from May of '23.
We'll make certain that we find out from the DEP if that's an active, not to our knowledge.
Yeah, I think something written from an environmental professional as to the status of that and would be helpful for the board's consideration with this application. All right, and then the last thing I'll just add, and it's actually timely for this application. I think as part of our rules committee meeting, we had talk about on sites that are being constructed in town, especially when there's multiple users and tenant spaces, about the trash refuse areas not necessarily always being commensurate with the amount of refuse that's generated by those type of activities. So you said there's 4 refuse enclosures for the site?
Yes, there are 4 proposed.
Is there any internal, compactor systems for cardboard and recyclables, or how's that handled?
So that hasn't been proposed as part of this building. That has with some other buildings we've done before, where we've had internal collection or collection system in one of the loading bays right outside of the door.
Yeah, so I would, it sounds like we're going to have another night on this. I would just look into that. It has been something that is becoming an eyesore for the township and the engineering department. I'm not saying, that's going to be what you're proposing, but with multiple users and the spaces strewn across a building, people don't always tend to run their garbage and trash. They kind of put it right next to the loading docks and things like that. So, maybe more refuse enclosures and larger spaces would be something positive for this application.
Have you thought about using compactors?
Charlie just mentioned it. I'm going to go over it with the client.
That's all I have for Mr. Zugner right now.
Okay, Jennifer, you have anything to add to that?
Not beyond what I've already said.
Okay. Sherry, do you have any comments on the landscaping with the?
So they have buffer plantings along the main road. Most of the trees there are in good condition, which is why we had them save it. But there is an area that's full of invasive species, so, we had spoken about, we're going to beef up that area a little bit more because those trees are going to come out. And, they had said they'd agree to my letter. They still need to complete their tree replacement calculations, so that has to be finalized.
We have been out there with Shari. We have the ticks to prove it. We walked that property together, including the area that Shari's describing as really invasive, not healthy trees, which we understand should be ripped out and redone.
Okay, board members, sir, Mike, Jose?
Over.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Zugner, is there a plan for backup power generation on this building?
There's no plan at the moment, and I think that might be also something the architect might be able to speak to, but there's no proposed generator or backup power on the site at the moment.
Okay, so is the building going to be all electric, or is it going to be bringing natural gas in as well?
I would defer that question to the architect, but
Okay. And I guess my other question will go to the architect as well, is whether there's going to be a conveyor system on the inside or not.
Okay, Jose, do you have anything? Nick?
Yeah, just looking at the Howell Township Fire Bureau site plan review, and they made mention on something about the building may require an emergency responder radio system once completed, and Charlie also had it in his report. Where are we with that?
Chief Prochnow said it might. It depends when the building is up, he'll determine whether or not.
He'll make that determination.
He makes the determination, we told him. we're
So
fine.
you've had a conversation about that with him
We
already? Okay. Mr. Zugner, what is the length of that turning lane going from on the northbound side of 524 going into the driveway? What is that, the length of that turning lane?
you mean the stacking lane, like the available
Like,
stacking?
yeah, I guess, is that what they call it, stacking?
Right, how many cars you could fit into it? I could get that for you in one moment.
Yeah. I'm more concerned about how many trucks.
It might take me a second, but I'll.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the only two I had for now.
Like how many trucks could stack in the turn, the actual left-hand turn lane, not the widening, but how much space is in that? It's really a question for,
Can you give a dimension?
yes.
He's working on coming up with that dimension. We'll share it
Okay.
in a second. If you wanted to move to another board member for question, we'll come back and answer Mr.
Okay.
Rosen.
Mr. Chairman, my only note was the one that Ms. Spiro pointed out is the tree replacement plan. Just knowing what's going to be coming out and what's going to be going back in.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. I keep kicking her. I was going to piggyback on something that Charlie brought up, but kind of leaped out at me too, but I know we're trying to figure out this warehouse versus flex and all that with the trash enclosures. Might be a little bit light, I think, with 4, if you have 9 different tenants and something to look at.
Anne Marie?
I'm still processing, but right now I have no questions.
John?
Just one question regarding the site plan. On the main road, on Lakewood Farmingdale Road, you see a retention basin right there. Just to the south of that retention basin, there's a light green shaded area that's like a light green.
That's the area right now that's proposed for the septic field for the building.
Thank you.
So that may not even be in the equation coming back as far as our concern about the septic.
I'm not going to answer that one way or the other.
Yeah,
but
okay,
yes, your
we'll
questions
wait
are
on that.
correct.
Tom?
I got a couple of questions. You say there's 3 offices. Are the offices like for general help secretaries and clerical? Or are you going to rent it to an actual, like, accountant or something like that? I don't understand it.
Best, there's two parts to that. Operations testimony, which our client can put on, but we'll put it on at the next meeting, and the architect who designed the building, and she'll be ready to answer that question.
Okay, and then you're going to have 9 tenants in there of a variety of different businesses? And also I'll be able to find out about the bathrooms, how many bathrooms and where they're going to be?
Okay.
And also, did you mention that you own an adjoining property?
Our clients own the adjoining properties, yes.
You weren't planning on using any of that current property for this particular case as parking for your other property, right?
No. The parking
Because I was
is-
wondering why you need 128 spaces. I know that's over than the required amount, and that you want that many additional, is that just for the future? You're not
So-
going to, like, flow any traffic from somewhere else in there, right?
No, our clients ask that we measure the parking that they have for the adjacent building and to have the same ratio of parking that they have on that building as this one. And I go back one more time, the building that's next door everything about it has no history.
It's separate and aside.
It just got built.
Okay.
And the parking that's there is working for them, so they want to replicate.
And I take it you're going to have large tractor trailers there, not just box trucks?
At this site?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'll also get the hours and make sure that no trucks are running before the hours of operation. You know, I'm not going to allow them to park on the property and the trucks running before the place is open.
The adjacent facility runs, its hours of operation are 24/7. There's only one tenant that's currently more than one shift, but they are permitted to go 24/7.
You're going to do that at this location?
That's the request, and there's no overnight vehicles. We can come up with that language that says that you can't have any vehicles that are on premises with their motors running.
Okay, that's all I have now.
For Mr. Barillo,
Yeah.
the greatest length, so from the center of our driveway to the end of the taper is 265 feet.
From the center of your driveway.
So like if you were to if you were to be at the point where you turn left into the driveway, the midpoint, back to the beginning of where the striped taper is 265 feet.
265?
Yes.
265. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Pape, you said next time you come, you will have operations testimony?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you.
And the only thing I had was, you said there's one monument sign at the north entrance.
Correct.
Okay, is that going to be designated as the main entrance, or?
Correct. So, that's an in-out at the moment, the way it's designed, but the southerly entrance is just an exit, so that you would come in and loop, and you would leave from the southerly entrance. So that's why the monument's at the northerly entrance. That's the one entrance.
Okay, but that means you would have a do not enter sign at the southern entrance.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have. So I guess we can listen to your architect
Yeah, let me
this
just,
time.
I just want to add a follow-up question, because Mr. Burrell asked about the fire. So obviously, any approval is subject to the outside agency and addressing comments from the fire bureau and the like. And this came up on another warehouse application that's come before this board, but where American Water actually said that they wouldn't allow fire suppression through the public water main, and they had to you might actually be the engineer on that one, where they had to put a pump station in after the fact, a pump house in after the fact, and then an underground storage tank for fire suppression. Have you had any discussions with them on that, and whether that could be a possibility of being needed for this?
I will specifically have that conversation. My
Yeah.
understanding so far has been that, no, this would be a main extension, and we'd have two taps to it, one for fire and one for potable water.
Yeah.
but-
The only reason I asked it on the other one, it was, we were able to, there was space for it to not have to come back to before the board, as an administrative approval. This site's a little bit tighter, so if there is any possibility of that happening, it would behoove the applicant to present that to the board as part of the application, so.
I will investigate that. I would assume the site will need a hot box.
Yeah, and that's in my letter. That's a requirement of the water company as far as connection for backflow prevention. It's got to be within a certain proximity of the right-of-way, and that's something that we've granted on commercial uses based off American Water. I'm more so talking about, for fire suppression purposes, if the flow from the public main either can't be sized appropriately or American Water doesn't want to provide that flow to such a site, they would have to provide, their own means of fire suppression by underground tanks, either, using the public water system and storing it on the site for if there is a fire, having the fire suppression, or, by a well or something to supplement that. So if there's any kind of structure or above-ground tanks needed for that, just let the board see it so that way it's part of the application and we're not, having to come back 2 or 3 times with an application.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. Anybody need to take a break? I want to move on.
Good.
I think it's good just to move. Okay, ready?
Good evening, Ms. Rubb. Good evening. You're sworn. So perhaps we could begin with you sharing your professional and educational background with the board.
Absolutely. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Melissa Robb. I am a graduate of the City College School of New York School of Architecture. I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey. I have appeared before this and other municipal boards throughout the state.
We accept your qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you could give the board your background with this project, identify the exhibits upon which you intend to rely. If you would like, I could give these
Oh,
for
yes.
handout
Please.
purposes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you can begin.
Thank you. So tonight I'll be walking the board through our architectural proposal. To provide a structure for my testimony, first I will outline the building's floor plan and then describe its elevations and architectural features. We are proposing a single-story, 130,943 square foot building, approximately 123,402 square feet of which is used for warehousing, and 7,504 square feet allocated for accessory office space. The building dimensions are 384 feet.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
7,500 total office space or 7,000 each office?
No, total for the entire building.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The building dimensions are 384 feet, 5 inches wide by 340 feet deep, with a height of 42 feet, 6 inches to the top of the standard parapet and 45 foot, 6 inches to the top of the raised areas at the entrances and corners of the building. The building is designed to accommodate up to 9 tenants, though units may be combined to meet a larger tenant's needs. Each tenant is equipped with a dedicated entrance located at either the front or either one of the building sides, a small office space for administrative use, and loading docks or drive-through garage doors for operations. On some of the deeper units, we have also incorporated a small receiving office at the rear to facilitate communication operations within each tenant suite. So if I can trouble you to pull up Exhibit 6, A6 I believe it is, or 6. That's the floor plan.
While you're doing that, I'm going to take this opportunity. So my statements that I made for my original notes of 3 offices, you're correcting it.
Sure. So I think to clarify, it's 3 groups of offices, but each group has 3 sub-offices that are adjacent to each tenant. So in this is one grouping, a second grouping in the front, and a third grouping on the side, each of them adjacent to their respective warehouse space. So again, 9 potential tenants, 9 offices, but the offices are grouped together in 3 distinct areas on the building.
So the office for a particular tenant space is not in the tenant space?
It is, it's adjacent. That's exactly why we group them such.
It's not really adjacent. Look at the 2 on the bottom. Where's the office space on the bottom?
Over here? Sorry, so, okay, let's go through one by one. So this is Unit 1, and its office space is right here where the red dot is. Unit 2 is this L shape, and again, it has an office that's attached to it. Unit 3, right here with that office. At the front, we have Unit 4, and its office space can be found in the front of the building. Unit 5 actually goes front, the full length of the building, and that's why we incorporated a second receiving office in the back. So, somebody could be there with the phone to talk to the front. And then the exact configuration is mirrored on the other side.
Can you just go back to the height, just quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
It's what, 45
So,
and a half to those steel?
yeah, so we measured from average grade to the top of the parapet. So the standard parapet, sorry, let me just grab my notes again. At the standard parapet, can I trouble you actually for the next exhibit, Exhibit 7, please? That'll make things a little clearer. Thank you very much, yeah. The standard building height, which I call, at these areas, from average grade to parapet is 45 foot 6 inches. Sorry, 42 foot 6 inches. At the raised areas in the corners and around the entry, we're at 45 foot 6 inches because they just pop up a drop.
That's the top, right?
Top, top.
45.5 is the top.
45.5 is the top, yeah.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to give some clarity on that as well, because I think in my letter, the calculation is a little bit more. So on your architectural plans, the 45.5, that's from the finished floor to the top of that parapet, right? The 45.5?
Yeah, I have that right, from elevation 71.5.
So that's the finished first floor, not the average grade then?
Okay,
Yeah, so.
thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, so I think I have in my letter, it's 46 and change, I want to say. And that's because you take the average grade 5 feet off the foundation. There is at-grade parking in the front, and then you have at the rear and the sides, there's like the, drop loading gate for like a tractor trailer. So when you do all that math, the height is actually greater. Granted, from the public right-of-way, you're going to be seeing it from the finished floor at 45 feet 5 inches, but it still would be a height variance, a C variance, because I think we're maximum of 45, right?
Yep.
In the zone?
Now, our client would be amenable to adjusting the height, that little bit, so that we're back, within the allowed.
The goal was to be compliant.
Yes.
The goal is to be compliant.
So you're going to adjust it down to 45 flat?
And again, measured, as Mr. Cunliffe said, from 5 feet around the building. Okay. The building will be constructed of tilt-up concrete panels designed with score lines and a painted finish to add color and variation. Thank you very much. In my talks with Ms. Beam, we've also agreed to add a water table treatment at the base of the building with some texture to it. So with tilt-up, you can stamp the panel so that it has some, stone look or a brick look, and that will, again, add some texture and break up the height of the building. We're also proposing these frames around each of the entrance areas to, again, add architectural interest and wayfinding to the site. Adjacent to the office spaces are these windows that you see here in the front, and each entrance is equipped with a canopy.
So the water table you're referring to
Yes.
is just in between the bump outs, right?
Correct.
It's not the entirety of the wall.
That is correct, in the lower areas, yeah.
That is what we discussed.
Thank you. We're also proposing some wall-mounted sconces and lighting for architectural interest and, function, as well as a sign for each tenant space, to identify each tenant space, and a address sign at the corner of the building. The address sign is approximately 15 square feet and within the ordinance. That concludes my direct testimony. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Jennifer?
I will say that she has worked with my office on coming up with this design. She's done a great job. Every single thing I've asked for, she has agreed to incorporate. The last little piece is the water table, but in fairness, we only spoke at the very end of last week, so she probably didn't have time to put it together for tonight. But as always, if the board were to act in the affirmative, we'd be happy to work with the office to make sure that it's done the way I know you guys want it, but I have no doubt it was a very easy collaboration.
Yeah. From what I see, I agree. I don't see too many issues with it. Charlie?
The only comment that I have, and Jen can say if I'm off base, but I don't know if if I saw this rendering before, but obviously, we knew there was a monument sign at the one site driveway, and we asked a question in our letter about what any building mounted facade signs. So I think the number of signs, if there's one for each tenant plus the monument sign, they probably need a relief for the number of signs being proposed.
The number on the front.
Plus, yeah, so the number of tenants, and then also, you've got the building address, the 175, so I guess it's 10, 11 signs total, one monument, and 10 wall facade mounted signs, so 11 total. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, right, if the monument sign identifies a tenant space, we just want, you know,
No,
a
I
user to
don't
come
think
on.
he's saying that
That-
there's a
okay,
problem with the
right,
number of
yeah, yeah,
signs.
sure.
I think he's just suggesting that.
Get
put it
the
on
relief,
record.
yeah, just get the
Absolutely.
relief.
I
That's
don't take
correct.
exception to it. I think it was done very tastefully. You know, it's kind of built into the facade, but they do technically need the relief.
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
would suggest, Ken, when you come back with just a little
Put the sign.
snippet, I'm not worried about that, but you know that the facade signs are based on area, right? Like a percentage of the linear. You're gonna be way, way under. So if you could just, when you come back, I don't know that you need to have the architect testify again, but just to understand, maybe Allison can incorporate it into her outline to say, yes, we're seeking the relief, but we're way under on the area, which I think is gonna be.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, you had a question I thought you needed to speak to.
Yeah, just to follow up, but before that, the color picture that's represented up there, that would be the elevation A
That is,
on the third sheet with the 3 bump outs?
that's correct, yes, elevation A.
Okay, so for the other bump outs, I'd say elevation B,
Mm-hmm.
is there going to be 3 separate because the doors are all close together, or is it just going to be one big one?
That's the one big one, yeah. We felt that it was gonna get too clustered, you know.
And then the same with elevation D, correct?
That's correct. D and B are mirrors of each other.
So there's only 5 bump outs that are required.
That's correct.
And the ones with the 3, are they going to have individual signage or just one sign?
Sure, so we have a sign on either side of the frame. You can see that on elevation B, they're called out.
Correct.
So 2 on those, that's what we have, not 3,
So 7, the number, and then the outside sign.
right.
Okay. So I had asked Mr. Zugner earlier, and the question was redirected in your way about whether or not we would have backup power generation.
So I think we would leave that to each tenant to decide if they wanted to incorporate a generator into their space. It's not something that we have designed at the moment.
I would suggest that, Lou, you look on the site plan. I mean, I know you're gonna come back for site plan if this gets approved as a use variance, but I would maybe just show like some proposed location on where those generators can be, so that it can get incorporated into the site plan, and that way a tenant doesn't have to come back here to get additional approval at that point in time.
Like a graded proposed pad location.
Just like, yeah, perspective location or whatever.
Yeah, we just had a medical office come in and they had a generator on the top and then they moved it at grade and put it in like a masonry kind of for sound purposes. And I just want to point out for the board too, because it is one of the conditional use requirements that the rooftops be made solar ready. The applicant is proposing solar on like 50% of the roof
Yeah.
area, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, anybody else?
You do have the electric room designated on your drawings, but there wouldn't be sufficient room for power generation and exhaust there.
I'm
So
sorry?
You have an electric room
Yes.
located, so having power generation with exhaust wouldn't be feasible there because that's one of your bump-out doorways. So you'd have to find another location for it.
So we have that incorporated as a single door on the front of on elevation A?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's just for service purposes. That's
Right.
not for
That's
backup
correct.
generation.
No, yes, correct, for service purposes, yes,
So that couldn't be a central location unless you modified the plans.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Nick?
Jose?
I have a question, Chairman. Okay, you're going down the line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where am I? Oh, the 6 drive-in loading ramps? These are ramps where the truck can actually go into the building?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so how are we, if the truck is running while it's in the building, how are we getting rid of the emissions?
Sure, so, I mean, the idea is for the truck not to run continuously through the building, but it is for smaller box trucks, you know, if that's the preferred method to unload the truck, like Mr. Zugner said, a UPS truck, something like that.
But is there a fan that's going to be taken
Yeah.
out? Is there something that's hooked up to the
Sure.
exhaust
Yeah.
of that truck to take out the emissions?
Yes, we absolutely will have fans in the building, and, you know, we'll consult with our MEP engineer with whatever exhaust, you know, with whatever exhaust they would require, with the understanding that trucks will be driving in the building.
Right. I mean, because I know, we all like to think that the drivers will shut their trucks off,
Yeah,
but we can't depend on that, and we don't need a situation where people are going to be overcome by fumes.
absolutely, yeah.
So we need proper evacuation
Ventilation, yeah.
of
Yeah,
ventilation to pull out.
absolutely.
It's refrigerated, it can't be shut off.
If it's refrigerated, it can't be shut off. That's a good point, too.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 receiving. So what is a receiving area? What is that used for?
So it's a secondary office if the main office is, you know, not in proximity to the loading docks. It's just so an employee could be stationed back there to receive deliveries, things like that, and then also be able to speak with the main office in the front of the building. So for example, Unit 5, right, if a truck pulls in the back, it's quite a long walk to those docks, so it's just a place to station another employee back there.
But not each unit has a receiving.
So it depends on its proximity to its loading dock. So
Yeah.
for Unit 3, and Unit 8, the loading docks are quite near the main office. We didn't think it necessary.
Okay, I was just wondering what it was. All
Yeah,
right, thank
sure.
you.
Glenn, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Matt? John? Okay, Tom?
Just for clarification, when I first started taking my notes, for some reason I read it was 3 offices, and it was 22,500 square feet. When I look on the blueprint, I see 9 offices, around 7,500 square feet for all 9.
That's right.
Is that correct? And
That
there's
is-
9 tenants?
That is correct.
So there's 9 offices, 9 tenants?
9 offices for the 9 tenants at a total of 7,541 square feet.
Okay, and inside each office, those little things, are those bathrooms?
Yes.
Okay. That's
Bathrooms
good.
and a janitor's closet.
I like to say it's a really a gorgeous-looking building.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Okay, unless there's any other questions, we thank you, and
Thank you very much.
I was looking to see if there was any public that we should ask if they'd like.
yeah, that would be a good idea, because I just feel that we,
Mr. Chair?
do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Eileen?
The board will now be open to the public. If you'd like to come up, raise your hand, and come up and state your address and your name.
Motion to close to the public? Nobody back.
Yeah. Have a second?
I'll second that, sir.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're closed to public. Mr. Pate?
I would assume
Mr.
Mr. Pate,
Yeah.
Mr. Pate, Mr. Zugner,
Yeah.
and the architect will come back next time?
I intend to ask both Mr. Zogner and the architect to return. I think the architect's testimony has been
Yeah.
probably going to be minimal, but.
In case we do have public, I mean, there might be a question, but I don't know who would question this, because this is really a nice plan. So anyway, but that would be good to have her come back. And,
Where is there room at the end?
yeah. Anybody else have a question before we set a date?
Do we need an extension on this?
Yeah, we have to get the date from Eileen, so we know
Okay.
before we do that. Mr. Pate, so you will have, somebody will be here testifying on the use of the building. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because I think we do have some questions on that. Other than that, I think we're good to set a date. Eileen?
March 10th, I have 2 applications on. March 24th, I have nothing. April 7th, I have nothing.
If I could just confer with the team.
one and then a bulk variance.
When's Passover, Glenn?
It's not till April. Yeah, and we already set the calendar that we were working around that already, so that shouldn't be an issue.
The 14th is for
Mr. Chair, March 24th is the date that works for the whole team. So and the fact that we're at the top of the agenda, I think.
Yeah, you'll be at the top. We need to get an expiration new date for that?
To make certain that the board has adequate opportunity, on the record, I'll grant an extension of time through April 30th, 2025. I'll follow it with a letter to Eileen tomorrow.
Do we need to send out further notice on this, public notice?
I would ask that, unless the relief that we're requesting is modified, and I don't think that it will be, unless it's modified, we ask that you carry it without renotice or republication.
Okay, everybody's good with that? Okay.
And I thank you all. We'll see you.
Okay, so put it on the record, this case number BA 23-06, Gateway Industrial 175 LLC, is being carried to March 24th with no further notice. Mr. Pate, good night.
Thank you, good night.
Good night.
Good night, Ken.
Before we adjourn, Tom, you had brought up something to us prior to the meeting. I wanted to have you just go over that with the board members before we maybe consider that as far as the training.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You want me to bring it up to Jennifer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mrs. Beebe, we'd like to have product knowledge courses like 3 or 4 times a year, and to come in for questions and answers. If you could come in, say, an hour, hour and a half before the board on what's convenient for the board and yourself, we could have a questions and answers to try to get the board on board with all changes and things that we really need to know while we're having our hearings. I myself am a little rusty, and, I need to get updated myself.
No problem.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank
Okay,
you very much.
everybody's good with that? I would say an hour before, because with some of
It's
those...
a great idea.
Yeah. And the other thing is for John, I believe if you got this package, you would want to get signed up for one of those classes, and there's plenty here, so you can probably work around your schedule.
It's online, so you don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah. So,
Just whoever needs to sign their oath, please don't forget.
yes.
Thank you.
Is there any other business? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to close? All in favor? Okay.
Next meeting is...
Yeah. Next meeting would be 2 weeks from now,
Hey, Golly Sparrow, what would you like? Golly, did-
27th. Next meeting, January 27th, 2025.
When I see-
Thank you.
It's the rough copy.